Let's look. Luke. What am I looking for? Okay. 7. Luke 7. All right. Good evening, all. Just getting myself pulled together a little bit here. How is everyone here this evening? Oh, well, okay, I'm getting this from Grover. Man, it's a good day. Oh, 2. It was a good day. So we'll be continuing kind of our irregular look at parables. And I'm just kind of, because I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, I was kind of working down through someone that kind of laid out a listing of a whole bunch of them. We're going to look at a couple tonight. They're not long ones, but just a little bit there. Cool. Yeah, we'll dig into a little bit of it tonight. And because it's irregular, we can kind of just piece them together. Next week, we won't have an evening service, so there won't be a class, so then it'll hold till March. So that's the way the schedule is currently. Tonight, both of them are actually going to come from Luke. They're going to be unique to Luke in this one. So we'll be first in Luke chapter 7. Luke 7. Near the end of it, 41 to 43 is the parable itself, although we'll look at a bit more of the context. An interaction actually with a Pharisee. At the house of a Pharisee, Christ uses a parable to prove a point, to answer kind of an issue that is existing there. And this Pharisee is actually named Simon. Though probably more likely Simeon, which would fit better with the son of Jacob, or Israel, of one of the tribes, because Simon is more of a Greek name, hence Simon in Acts 8, and I don't think a Pharisee would want to have a Greek name typically, but there's certain elements to that. I think Paul's, I guess, is kind of Saul. Yeah, no, Saul really isn't. That's king. I don't know. Anyway. So there's this interaction that's going on. He's brought into the home of this Pharisee. And, well, let's just read the parable first, and because it's just a couple verses, and we'll work on the context a little more. I'll start in verse 40, actually. And Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he replied, say it, teacher. That teacher there, I think, is rabbi. A moneylender had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii, while the other 50. When they were unable to repay, he graciously forgave them both, so which of them will love him more? Simon answered and said, I suppose the one whom he forgave more. And he said to him, you have judged correctly. This is one of those almost like a sayings thing. It's kind of like, oh, this isn't overly complicated. Sometimes some of these on their face aren't very difficult to figure out. The bigger question is, what is he meaning by it, and how does it fit with the interaction that's taking place, right? So in this short parable of a couple, 3 verses, we have what figures? So let's just run through the list here. Who is described by Christ in this parable? Okay, that's the broader context. It's just yeah, you're right. It's dealing with the woman who is a sinner that washes his feet. But inside the parable, I'm meaning, you've got 3 people. You got the moneylender and the 2 debtors. Oh, that did not. I'm having to use one of these nubs because I forgot my stylus. Debtor, I'm going to call them debtor 1 and debtor number 2. And the one owes 500 and the other owes 50. 500 denarii. See, it's dragging as part of the problem, so it's like, okay, 5. There we go. Yeah. A denarii, or a denarius. Denarii is the plural. What was a denarius? Yes, that's the equivalent of it. Money is the correct answer. Coinage, Roman coinage, and it was commonly I guess it is, one denarius was about a day's wage. I guess they had slow inflation back then because everything was gold-based. That's a whole other discussion. So 50 days' wages, kind of, like 6 weeks. Well, probably a little more when you have the Sabbath, versus 500 days' wages, which is like a year and 2/3 straight, and then maybe closer to 2 years if you account for breaks and various things. Okay, that's no small amount of funds, right? So we have this interaction. You have the moneylender, you have the debtors. Simon is the one whom he's talking to. He's the Pharisee. But in this, he will be the stand-in, the figure for the audience. There's a term XP that's that. You're reading along, and Luke is recording this, and he's speaking, in essence, to you as he's speaking to him. So it leads to some questions. Maybe the first is, why would a moneylender forgive the debts? What? Well, you're technically, yes. If it was a jubilee, he would be required to, except for they didn't do that. They had broken that system long before. They were supposed to, under jubilee years, to return the land back to everyone and reset everything and fix it all. And that lasted maybe through the judges, because once certain elements got into power, that broke. And then once they left the land and returned, and it was all broken up among different... By this point, that was harder to do. But you're correct. You're correct. But that kind of forgiveness would be imposed by law, right? It would be more of kind of like a penalty or something you have to do. He's choosing to do this. Why? Mercy. That is what the text says. He offers grace or mercy. That was kind of an unfair question because he isn't really giving the answer. However, when we extend this parable beyond its core, it's giving us a glimpse into something else, which asks the same question, why would someone else forgive something? And we're kind of heading toward that. But it is about grace. Okay, why forgive the bigger of the two debts? If you have one you forgive for 50, could he have forgiven 50 on each of them and then made the one pay the 450 he owes? He seems...
It was his money to lend. He lended. He had the authority and the option to choose how much he forgave. He had that opportunity.
Okay, so the moneylender has the authority over that which he lends in his accounts and various things. And this might be supposition, so just kind of take with a grain of salt. But do you think moneylenders were in the business of forgiving debts? Well, in the 21st century, are moneylenders in the business of forgiving debts? So in the first century, moneylenders, guess what, weren't really in the business of forgiving debts. Although what they charge for interest in comparison with now would surprise you, because the law forbade a lot of what we would call usury. Well, what it called usury we is commonplace today, but that's a whole other problem. Okay, so what's the general theme then? What's this parable talking about? If you were to put it in a word, what would you describe it as? Okay, you took a dark side of it, which is fine. Everybody's in debt. Forgiveness would be what I was leaning for, but you're not wrong. Everybody's in debt. Dun, dun, dun. No, forgiveness, because it's going to lean back to the greater context and answer that question. Simon has asked, which of them will love him more? Which of them will appreciate him more? I find that interesting, because what's Simon's answer? Yeah, the one who's forgiven more. Well, yeah, I got off 500 versus 50. This other guy got off 50. It's that's even better. But it's interesting, because you could argue if whatever your slate is, if it's wiped clean, You should appreciate that element of it. But it's going to carry over. And Christ doesn't actually say whether his answer is entirely correct, but it is leaning into the greater situation. Now, what is the greater situation? Grover, you can bring it up now. What is the greater context of what's going on that this is found in the middle of? If we Okay. That is true. And what had just happened? It's earlier in chapter 7. I'll start with verse 36, I think is about right, because there's just a whole chain of events. Luke has a very different way of arranging things. It's theorized it's because he's trying to provide a more chronological account. There's arguments for and arguments against that. He does try to follow a more historical, use a historicity, and that is a word. You can use it at your next party to show off the historicity of the events. But it does end up it jumps around a little more than some of the others. Verse 36, now one of the Pharisees was requesting him to dine with him. And he entered the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table, requesting Jesus to dine with the Pharisee. The hymns can get confusing. And there was a woman in the city who was a sinner. Now, I have a footnote here. Literally, or explained, an immoral woman. Okay? That's a likely idiom or replacement term for woman of ill repute would be the same thing. All are sinners, but she's a sinner. That's when you have to add the emphasis, right? And when she learned that he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster vial of perfume, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears, and kept wiping them with her hair of her head, and kissing his feet, and anointing him with the perfume. Now this might seem like a really, really weird thing to do in 21st century culture. What is she up to? Okay. How is she showing homage or attention?
The washing of the feet, and the using of, the perfume to not only just clean the feet, but also give it a pleasant aroma.
Okay.
Okay, and so then she's kissing them as well. And since she didn't use a towel, she's using her hair to absorb the moisture. I mean, she's showing all of this as a humble gesture. She's on her knees, she's on her feet, she's showing him adoration.
Okay, adoration and veneration. Foot washing. Was this common practice then? Why? Why engage in foot washing?
Well, they walked in the dirt, and they had either sandals or nothing.
Yeah.
Feet got dirty.
They didn't have Chuck Taylors to wander around in. That's true. They would travel by foot a long ways. Their feet would get, frankly, pretty gross. And there are certain taboos that were created because that still exist in Eastern culture, by the way. The raising of a foot or the tossing of a shoe is an insulting gesture to show the heel of a foot and so forth, and it comes down from them being gross and so forth. And when you reclined at a table, they didn't sit cross-legged or other things. They tended to sit in a direction, and you had to be careful not to turn your feet towards someone because that's an offensive gesture. And in a fancy household, you would have servants, slaves, bond slaves that would come and take care of your feet to get them looking kind of nice before presentation things. That was the work of a lowly, lowly slave. So when Christ washes the apostles' feet, that's the emphasis there. This woman doing that, she's doing a very low act on its face, but with a lot of veneration. And the inclusion of the perfume, which she brought, so unless she stole it, and I don't think that's the case.
I just assume she used it in her business.
That's possible. And it probably cost a bit. But she had a supply. And using her hair was probably, her hair was probably getting messed up, all these various things. It's just this weird scene, but it's a scene of devotion and honor, personally from her. Now, verse 39, now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who and what sort of person this woman is who's touching him, and that she is a sinner. Sorry, I have to do it in that voice. That's his inner monologue. He sounds exactly like that in my head. If he knew. Notice, he says this to himself. He doesn't say it out loud. Other times this happens. Christ knows man. He knows what this guy's thinking, so he hits on it immediately. And this is when we jump into the parable proper. Well, that's interesting. Afterwards, verse 44, turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but she, since the time I came, has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she anointed my feet with perfume. For this reason I say to you, her sins, which are many, have been forgiven, for she loved much, but he who was forgiven little loves little." And then he says her sins have been forgiven, which is going to make everyone angry. But this all ties back to that parable. He makes a point here. When she put the oil on him, he uses the term anointed. Anointed, which is a special thing. Messiah, Christ, Christos, means anointed one. He's like, I entered your house. You didn't have anyone wash my feet, which was a common courtesy. You haven't offered me a kiss, and this is not a eros physical gesture as we would. It's again very Eastern greeting type of kiss. Yeah, greet one another, the holy kiss, that kind of thing. She's showing attention. Anointing his head with oil would probably be a bit much for a guest, but he's making a point. If anyone was worthy of having his head anointed with oil, it was whom? The anointed one. The Pharisee just saw, the Pharisee's like, oh, teacher, come hang out with me. You're one of the, you're looking like you're getting some kind of attention here. Come join the cool kids at the cool table. And then one of the others comes over, an interloper. How dare you, if you knew who this person was.
From the perspective of the Pharisee, he saw him as an equal.
Yeah.
And she recognized his deity.
She recognized something special in him. And it is going to come, it's a common theme actually throughout each of the Gospels. The people who see Christ more for whom he is are the last ones you expect. A blind man, women of ill repute, or tax collectors that usually had that level too, just because of the hatred of the Roman state, and a centurion or two, Gentile. They'll see him for who he is. Who should have known who he was? Well, the Jews and all of them, a legal expert, an expert in the law, all these different things. So, like I said, it's only like 3-4 verses, right? 3 verses. There's so much going on right here. How does the thing is we've looked at the parable, we've looked at its surrounding context. Let's put them together. How does the parable relate to the situation then? What's the point? He kind of summarizes it with that last statement. What's in view?
The way I see it and understand it is those that grew up in the church and were morally correct and did the right stuff, living, following the rules, those kind of things, don't really appreciate the salvation as much as the ones who are in the pits of despair of society because they know the evil and they know the forgiveness.
Okay, so those that grow up in it may not appreciate as much the darkness that can come with that. Who do you send a physician to? Him who is well or who is sick? John?
I think it's a significant factor that she wet his feet with her tears. We haven't talked about that much yet. But
Oh, okay.
what are tears about? Is that tears about I'm horrible and you're here to save me, and these are great tears of joy, or these are great tears of sadness for the life that I've lived, and now the Messiah is here, and we haven't talked much about those tears, but in my opinion, when I think about the life that I lived and the life I have now in Christ, sometimes it brings tears to my eyes. And here she was at the feet of the Messiah, wetting his feet with her tears and drying his feet with her hair.
Yeah. I was trying to see if there's, and I didn't think so, there isn't a contextual specific answer as to why she is weeping. But I would imagine if it was cynical or was something lacking, it would have been pointed out. It is not criticized by any means.
Wasn't there something about they literally saved the tears in a bottle? Over in the Middle East, they do have these tear bottles. I don't know if
Yeah, there are tear vessels, and there are certain traditions that go with that.
they may have been saved up. Who knows?
Well, I mean,
It was an obvious indication of deep humility, deep sacrifice. She knows who this guy is.
she could have used something like that, but her openly weeping fits the idea just as well. And here's the thing. If there was anything about being cynical about weeping, the world can be a cynical place in general, but the first century, they had it figured out. They had professional wailers. And it's because the law required that if someone died, you had to bury them the same day. I don't know what happened if it flipped over right at like sundown. They had probably a contingency for that. But you didn't wait. So a lot of times you had to throw something together. That sounds really bad. But you had to put something together quickly, and if you didn't have enough people that would be sad, you hired professional people to come and cry at the funeral so they could then be buried that same day. There was a cottage industry of this kind of thing. So there are people that could fake being emotional. Let's say, this isn't that. It wouldn't surprise me as that form of poetry either in Psalms or Proverbs. But he notices them. The thing is, if the central idea about the parable is all are debtors, or forgiveness, how does that then relate here? Because he turns to her and tells her she's forgiven. Doesn't say it to Simon.
Right. Because he's not reticent.
He's not reticent.
He's not contrite. He has.
I think she was having an uncontrolled emotional response to the entire situation. Here I am with the Messiah, to be the Messiah, the only one who can save me, or everybody else for that matter. And the tears begin to flow.
I mean, I think this is evidence of the beauty of God's writing through the Holy Spirit, that there's no explanation of why, so that we, as in our own personal situation, can apply our position to the tears.
Okay. Well, and here's the thing. Luke records the information we need. He may not include every nth detail. It's just noting that he forgives her. Then the next controversy is, who is this guy that can forgive sins? Well, you're not going to receive forgiveness when you're going to challenge it. And then he tells her, go in peace, you're fine. Probably because they were, who knows, they could have started to get angry with this person. But, who is going to love more? That's in the parable. Who will love more? And then she has shown him more love, more appreciation. Now, does this then mean, well, because you could take this to a crazy level, to the antinomian level, I should go be the very worst I can be, rack up a big, big, big debt, so then I can really appreciate it when I'm forgiven. Is that what this is saying? No. That would be crazy.
Paul addresses that in Romans 5 and 6.
Yes. We're going to get to that in Romans 6. Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? May this never be. However, the accounts here are interesting because I think, and take this as you will, okay? I'm wondering if maybe he's just accommodating a little bit to the Pharisees' perspective as opposed to the reality of the situation of who has the bigger debt, frankly. Because pride and intransigence can count heavily against that Pharisee just as much as anything this woman has done.
Well, in the reality of the situation, passage of James, they're both equal debtors.
Yeah.
But because of perspective from Simon, perspective from her, she's more grateful for forgiveness because of how she felt she had lived her life.
Well, and there's also this element here in where is it? End of verse 47. he who is forgiven little loves little. You can almost, I wonder if there's an echoing there also to forgiving others, because that's going to become a heavy element. He who forgives, to him it will be forgiven. And this man, this person was lacking in that.
Well, and to go along with that, my thought still goes back to the Pharisee himself with his whole, his attitude as this woman's weeping and crying over his feet, and him thinking to himself, he has no desire to tell, he thinks this is wrong. He thinks that, this person, and he keeps it to himself. So even if it was something that he thought Jesus should be aware of, he's not willing to go and tell him. So if he's worried about Jesus, as if he knew, it's not that. His attitude is very selfish to begin with. It's sit back and judge. So it's not, you're not going to get that. He's going to be a more begrudging, well, I could have taken care of it kind of attitude of a forgiveness too. He doesn't want to see that he needed the forgiveness, if you will.
Yeah.
Bear with me. It's more of that kind of thing than versus somebody who realizes their sins. The attitude between the two is what's really in focus.
He thinks he has it figured out and doesn't need forgiveness, and she acknowledges it, which will be mirrored later with, say, the publican and the Pharisee and so forth. That becomes kind of a theme. What's interesting in this case is everything we've gotten in this realm is outside of the parable, but it gives the parable context. And so that's what's, not all of them are self-contained, because the parable is pretty short, and it's pretty cool. I mean, this moneylender forgives both of them, but it says the one who's forgiven more will appreciate it more, because he's, and this is carried forward to the situation. I think it also just comes down to honesty, introspection, being honest with yourself about looking where you're standing. And until you're honest with yourself, forgiveness is going to be a very hard thing to come by. And if you think you have it figured out, it's like, oh, those people, they're a mess. How can he interact with those people? But if you saw him as a savior, not of a nation physically, but of a people who had need for dealing with sins, you would be sending him to these people and helping him. But that's not the attitude they had. Okay, that was the first one I wanted to look at. Any thoughts? Is that enough? Or is there more to explore? It's fine. I'm trying to keep this about half-ish way. Okay, let's then go to Luke 12. This one's a pretty well-known one. Reference. And verses 16 through 21. This one's context is a little more open in general. There's some elements here afterward which are going to be mirroring what he'll say in Matthew 6 in the Sermon on the Mount. Some of the elements from the Sermon on the Mount are in Luke, but they're kind of broken up in different places. And some of these almost follow almost like a stream of consciousness kind of just things just coming out. But anyway, there's structure to it, but this one isn't tied as much. It is tied to its context, but it isn't like situation specific as much. So verse 16, and he told them a parable saying, the land of a rich man was very productive. And he began reasoning to himself saying, what shall I do, since I have no place to store my crops? Then he said, this is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years to come. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. Oh, that's just going to get you in trouble. Verse 20, but God said to him, you fool, this very night your soul is required of you, and now who will own what you have prepared? So is the man who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Okay. So the rich fool, this is described by some, or there's a couple different ones. So which figures do we have in this? I mean, there's really not a whole bunch. You have the farmer. Would you quit dragging? You were writing so much better earlier. You got the farmer. If you're avoiding like particular persons, you could just say the barns. Because they're a thing, because they'll grow to, he wants to make them extra large. He wants to supersize the barns. And you know what, supersize, I haven't done that for 30 years. Just large, make it large. And then you got the harvest and God. God is another figure in this one. And his soul, I suppose. Though that's... Is he literally talking to his everlasting soul, or is it more of an internal monologue toward the suke, the inner man? That probably fits better. Either way, it works. He's talking to himself. Okay. What's the deal with this one? What's the mistake the man makes? And here's the thing. People will take an example like this and reach the wrong conclusion a bunch of times. So I'll ask, was his sin being successful? Why not?
Because it didn't say anything about it. What it talks about is storage.
Okay. The land was very productive. Should it not have been? I mean, if you want to complain about equity or various things, how dare this man have a very successful farm? Is there anything wrong with that? Does God ever have an issue with someone being successful ethically?
No, sometimes he's actually part of the success.
Okay.
But the focus is not the success of the farm. It's the storage of the grain.
Okay. Well, what's the deal with that then? What's the problem there?
Plan it for the future, but he doesn't know.
There's nothing physically wrong, it's his attitude.
Okay.
It's all about the farmer.
It's all about his attitude and his mindset and how he's focused. Now, I always had the question, why tear down the old barns and build new ones? He doesn't have the space for it. So what's he going to do in the meantime? So I guess the scenario sets up, the fields are ready for harvest, hasn't been collected yet. So he's like, I'm going to knock what I have down and put something bigger in its place. Sounds like a lot of work, but it's good. So then he could really fill it up. If we stop there, okay, I'm at capacity at the silo or whatever, or the granary. I don't know what he's doing here. I need more space for these things. Is that in and of itself wrong to want to store his bounty? Okay.
We all want bigger houses.
John does.
Seldom do any of us live in the first apartment that we rented. We don't see that. So bigger and better is just a natural part of what we strive for. However, that shouldn't be our main goal. We have to have that goal of being charitable, helping others that need our assistance, especially those within the church. We have to be focused on those things as well. There's nothing wrong with growth and accumulating wealth. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, it's going to, accumulating it is going to be the thing. It's going to, the core is going to be in the decision point he comes to. Doyle?
To me, it seems that the previous interaction
Mm-hmm.
ended with one's life is not in the abundance of his possessions.
Mm-hmm.
And this parable is illustrating that fact.
It is. It is illustrating the greater context.
His life was all embroiled in that
His things.
building up of himself and his possessions. And that's all
We don't
there
know
was
what
to
his motives were, but we have a great example in the Bible with Joseph. And Joseph stored grain
Well, that's true.
for the future, right?
Well, his motivations are going to be borne out with the conversation he has with himself, is what I would say. But here's the thing. Having plenty, I don't think, people get really caught up in the plenty, but then we remember talents. One's given 5 and makes 5 and 2. Okay? To him much is given, much is expected is the other problem. Or, well, with much power comes much responsibility. That's Uncle Ben. That's not the Bible. But it's what he's going to do with it. And people get hung up on the aspect of the things. Could he have done differing things with it? I mean, you say he wasn't generous. He could have used some of that bounty to help others, and that would have been a loving thing and maybe a wiser thing to do. I don't have space for this stuff, so I'm going to invite people to share in my bounty. But was he bound by that? It's like we want to bind him to that. Is he criticizing him for that in that? That's not quite what's here.
It's the declaration, soul
Yep. It's
declares where his heart is.
Yeah, he says, I'm going to tear down my barns, build larger ones, there will store my grain and my goods. Okay, verse 18, okay. And let's just say for the sake of argument, he has done everything else he's supposed to. He has harvested his field in a circle and left the rest for the gleanings by law, which is how they were supposed to do it. You'd have a rectangular plot, but you'd harvest it in a circle, and whatever was left were gleanings for those who were in need or passing through to glean the grain from. So they were supposed to do. Say he does all that. Then verse 19. I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years to come. You have it made. You are safe. You are taken care of. You are secure. Take your ease. Eat, drink, and be merry. But, I mean, he's like the ant. He's prepared for winter. That's a different idea. God says, you fool, that very night your soul is required of you. Now who will own what you have prepared? The foolish element of this is when he made everything about his possessions, he can't take them with him. And now they're going to sit in a silo. If that's what defines him, he's missing something.
I think a key word in verse 19 is the word relax. So we're all going to eat, we're all going to drink, and we're all going to be merry. But this relaxing, that's not what Paul taught when he taught us to finish the race and to run the race.
Okay. Typically, especially idiomatically in the first century, because it shows up elsewhere, eat, drink, and be merry has a very party element to it. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Interesting. But yeah, to take his ease, well, I mean, and here's the thing. Would it be inherently wrong for him to collect a bunch and then want to take it easy because he's secure with the next harvest? See, that's when the famine comes. It's the attitude. There's so much to this. It's so subtle because people like to jump on all these different things, and really, it's like, you fool. He doesn't even says your soul is required of it. I'm taking you home. It doesn't even have to be a condemnation of being greedy, although there's an element of that. It's that he had everything figured out. He made a plan. God had other ideas. He put his faith in his things. Yeah.
His plan did not acknowledge the source of it all.
So is the man.
Purpose.
Yep. So is the man who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. That doesn't have to be a binary thing. You can be rich toward God first, and in doing so, and a lot of times they kind of go hand in hand, depending if you can be rich toward God and have treasures to take care of yourself in the time being. But here it's still about taking care of himself. It's interesting because he immediately moves to that section, which would be in Matthew 6 as well. For this reason I say to you, do not worry about your life as to what you will eat, what your body, or what you'll put on. For life is more than food, body more than clothing. Consider the ravens, which is in Luke, or the birds of the air. Neither sow nor reap, but they have nor storeroom nor barn. Interesting, because that's like an almost callback. He had storerooms, he had barns, he had a lot of stuff. The ravens are taken care of. Guess what? Those ravens are going to be eating more of his crops than he will. Much like James. Do not say, you will go to such and such a place and make a profit, but say, if the Lord wills. It's all in the attitude. But James isn't saying, don't go and make a profit. He's saying, put God first. If the Lord wills, we're going to go do this thing, but thy will be done.
Scripture that came to my mind when talking about the guy and the prophet and all this stuff, that, was it Ephesians, that says, let the thief no longer steal, but let him labor doing honest work. And so that, the extension of that, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much make money, and it's not wrong, but it's so that you have this opportunity.
Yep.
And the same thing as the guy we're talking about now, that again reminded, it is a parable. It's not a real story.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of speed and urgency through getting through the context so that you get the message without having to dwell too don't put your faith in stuff.
Don't put your faith in stuff. Now, we could explore the ideas of what he could have done and various other things, especially, now, he doesn't notice he's going to die. But he doesn't know he's got tomorrow, is the inverse of that. Sorry, John.
He's also not being thankful to God. He's talking to his own soul. He says to his own soul, you have ample goods.
You have ample goods. You have a chump. Yep.
He's giving himself all the credit instead of giving God the credit for everything that he has.
Look what I have accomplished. Look at my bank account. Look at my things. I am set. I don't have to worry about anything else in this life. Then you're hit by a bus. You know, that's kind of an extreme example, but you don't know. And it's really attitudinal. And he was trying to impart this to a crowd. Now he's speaking to a number of people who would really like to be this guy. Many of them are making their denarius a day and getting their daily bread. And that expression, give us our daily bread, from his model prayer, very fitting. They didn't have the same means of, they had yeast to help it to rise, unless it was unleavened bread. But they didn't have a lot of the preservatives or refrigeration or various things. It was uncommon to literally get your daily bread that day, to have what you would have. And if it wasn't available, you didn't eat that day. You didn't get your denarius or whatever. Give us our daily bread. They were subsisting. And to hear of someone who's doing really well and storing it up, you get that envy. That can go the other direction. They can be envious of this guy, but he's also a bad example. It's so easy to get caught up on the things. Ironically, trying to explain a parable that's telling us not to get caught up on things. You know what I'm saying with that? It's like you get so caught up on, this guy was greedy, he was rich. He was self-assured. That was his problem. He may not have been the worst guy. There's very little more that we know. He just is self-assured. And self-assurance places one's treasure with oneself. Do not place your treasures in this life, but place your treasure in heaven, where moth or rust do not destroy. Okay, does that mean we're earning things in heaven? That's a whole debate in and of itself. But it's going to come down to his attitude in focusing. So, we've kind of gone through some of these. Is it wrong to expand one's own business? No. What's the actual sin? No. Is it wanting a profit? No. It's what you're going to do with it. Now, the trouble is, much like...
It's not even sorting in the barns. It's the attitude of, now I can kick back and not do anything because I have all this
Because
stuff.
I took care of it. Yeah. Instead of, Lord, thank you for blessing me with how much you've given to me. What's the next challenge? What can I do? And now, and you could even say, I have this free time now because of what has been granted to me. How can I use that to your glory? And he'd say, well, sorry, you're done, but thank you. But no, that's not the attitude he had. It's not wrong to profit. It's not wrong to have things. Actually, one could argue that in Romans 12 that being able to accumulate wealth is itself a talent or a gift, but such a person is meant to use that. Again, much is given, much is expected. To be generous with it, to be a Barnabas-type encourager with it, to share of your bounty. And it's also a difficult thing, which gets back to the talents, which we'll do. The more you have, the greater temptation there is to rely on it. Who were the people who were more likely, doesn't say this was necessarily the case, but who are the people that are more likely to respond to Christ in the first century? The rich or the poor? It's a lot harder to hunger and thirst after righteousness if you don't know what it means to hunger and thirst. That doesn't mean it's impossible. There were some very generous people as well. But the more you have, the more you want to hold on to what it is. You can just imagine this guy's attitude. It's like, oh, you have those stresses of life. Don't worry about tomorrow and the different things, but you stress. He's like, what about tomorrow? And all he has to do is look out his window. See my barns, I'm good. See my barns, I don't have to worry about anything. Okay, that might be true in an earthly sense, but where's your attention? I don't know. This one has always been interesting to me because I have seen lessons and commentaries that focus on this guy's sin was being successful, in essence. They don't put it in those terms. And that misses the mark so hard. It's like, no, he shouldn't have had a good return. He should have had the same as everybody else. I'm like, what are you talking about? He shouldn't have planned or purposed. Well, okay. He should have not planned or purposed without God. And that's where the issue is. It's where the focus is. And, yeah.
Does this whole thing also have an understood implication of neglect in the proper preparation that he should have made and didn't make for his soul?
I would say so. It's interesting because it's so brief. So it kind of opens up these various things. And all God says is your soul is required of you, meaning he's going to die. Unlike some where it's like, you are now condemned. He doesn't even have to be condemned. He says he's being foolish, which is not good. But it would be easier if it's like, you horrible, greedy guy, you're going to burn for nothing. But that's not it. He was just short-sighted, self-assured. And you're right, failed to prepare. He'd prepared so much on this earth, but he'd forgotten about what was most important. So preparation between him and his God, that's a part that isn't specifically answered, but it could be a part of it, certainly. I don't know. Some of these, there's open questions.
Well, I was going to say, when you're talking about, that's such a sticky reference to the first century people anyway, because they really didn't have a concept about the spiritual realm anyway. And so the concept of, that's why Jesus attracted the attention, because he was able to do so many things physically here and now, that kind of stuff, so that people were taken care of here and now. And so within this parable of this, you put all your faith in your things and what you've done, and you haven't thought about eternity. To us, we have a handle on it without a problem. There's no concept. Okay, yeah, we're all talking about eternity. We understand that. But for them, that was such a vague concept they really did not understand.
Yeah, and there were plenty whispering in their ears that there was debate over whether there was a resurrection of the dead at all.
Right.
Between the Sadducees and the Pharisees and all of that. So yeah, that creates some challenges. It makes you wonder, well, what does he mean, your souls? It's going to Abraham's bosom, I suppose, but the Sadducees, I guess, didn't even believe in that. So what's the point of it all? They're all I never understood that. Well, who knows? Yeah. Well, like I said.
Luke 12:31 kind of sums it up.
Okay.
Instead, seek his kingdom, and
These things will be added to you. Yeah. Seek his kingdom. If he began his planting and everything with that attitude in mind, it would have put him in a much better place.
Solomon said it, fear God, keep his commandments, this is the whole of man.
The whole duty and the whole of man. Yeah. Ecclesiastes 12, I believe. Okay. Well, those were the two I was going to look at this evening. Any other thoughts and different things we heard about? I think close to 6. So. Okay. Does anyone need Lord's Supper this evening? I know some were away, but they were away at other congregations. So. Okay. Anything need announced, mentioned? Meal at 5:30 on Wednesday. I guess the New Road Ladies' Day is on Saturday. I was thinking of anything else that was before next Sunday, but that's the only thing I can think of.
Not this week.
Yeah.
Men's breakfast week.
Yeah, it's the week after that, yeah.
Next Saturday, because January.
Yeah, and then next Sunday is going to be class and worship, no evening service. So, anything else? If not, Randy, would you close us in prayer?